From the very beginning, I never knew that I was so lucky to have launched my career as a law student at Tom's hip and to learn from the best. It's ruined me for forever going anywhere else.
Wishing him a happy birthday, but he'll turn it around and he'll say, you know, I get all the accolades, I get all these awards, but it's because of all of you who made it possible. And you are the people who are behind the scenes, who work hard to get me where I'm at.
I remember once I was trying a case with Tom Girardi, and we're in the midst of a very important witness, and he turns and looks at me and he goes, Lyra, do you believe we get paid for doing this? I mean, that's just, he's fun to work with. He loves what he does. And he truly believes that our firm is making a difference in people's lives.
You've won cases, and I think we have a graphic here we're going to put up. We're talking not small amounts here. $4.85 billion settlement with pharmaceutical giant Merck for personal injuries to consumers of the drug Vioxx. $1.9 billion settlement for California consumers who were defrauded by the manipulation of natural gas prices. $1.7 billion settlement for California consumers that were defrauded by the manipulation of natural gas prices. So, I mean, these are not slip and fall kind of numbers. These are some serious numbers.
Yeah.
Explain how lawsuits like these differ from others in the sense why the damages are so high.
Well, because the damage is so high. You know, I mean, that's really the situation. You have a situation where somebody harms a whole bunch of people, defrauds a whole bunch of people, et cetera, and that's why those cases become so large.
Like, what does your day look like? You wake up, you hit the alarm clock, and then what happens?
Well, the alarm clock is Erica, and she says, hey, Tom.
Get up.
Get up, because it's 6:15 and the trainer is downstairs. So I work out every morning, 5 days a week. The trainer shows up and we have an hour session. And then after that's over with, to hear what Erica's doing on Housewives of Beverly Hills and Dancing with the Stars and so forth, to be brought up to date of what's going on there is terrific. And then generally it's a court appearance, a settlement conference, it's a status conference and so forth of cases. And you know, the one thing I've learned, I think, over the 3 or 4 years I've been practicing is that client communication is so vital, so important. You know, as a young lawyer, I knew what I was doing, and to tell the client that, oh, they've taken this depo or this is going on, that was kind of irrelevant because I was handling the case. And I've learned, however, that for clients to be involved the whole step of the way, especially those people that have suffered a great loss, they have to know not only what's going on, but they have to know what the heck is going on, Tom, you know. And so I've really learned that, and I think our firm is pretty good at making sure we keep these people in the loop, which is pretty nice. And then lunch is never alone. A lot of times lunch is with the lawyers on the other side. Hey, maybe we should be doing this direction and so forth. Sometimes it was lawyers who send cases to us, so we want to bring them up to date and so on. Then about 5:30 or so, almost all the time, I have a little meeting with our younger lawyers, 1 or 2 at a time, kind of to talk about what they're doing, what's going on here, the case, etc. And generally that's done with a glass of wine, which makes the 5:30 meeting all the better. And so I think that's more or less the day.
Tell me about some of the awards the law firm has received.
You know, it's a very competitive business, this law stuff. And it's really nice. You have people here that have truly dedicated their lives to the practice. 5 o'clock doesn't mean anything to them unless it's 5 in the morning. You know, and it's a life sentence to come with our firm. Everybody was a law clerk when that's how they came with us. and everybody has been here 35 years, 30 years, 25 years, etc. And one of the nicest things, the Daily Journal, which is kind of the Bible of the legal community, all the judges get it, etc. They picked the 25 best trial lawyers in the state of California. And I'm on the list, which was really nice. David Lira, my partner's on the list. Amy Solomon's on the list. Apparently there was some indication that, you know what, how can we have 3 people from some small firm? And apparently somebody at the Daily Journal said if we did it right, there'd be 18 of them on the list. One of the reasons they work so hard is they truly believe in what we're doing. You know, I think if we were defending some corporate entity that was hurting people and so forth, I don't think they'd be working this hard. I think the majority of the reasons that all these secretary people and all these lawyer people work so darn hard is they truly believe in what we're doing.
He has given back to all the schools where he was educated. He's a big supporter of Loyola High School. He's a big supporter of his law school. And one of the trial advocacy buildings at Loyola Law School doesn't bear Tom's name, it bears his father's name, because he wanted his father recognized for helping him through Loyola Law School and other educational institutions.
What would you say is one of the most memorable or important cases that your firm has handled?
Well, I'll tell you this, Keck versus Higgs is my first trial. My mom is coming to the trial.
Oh, no.
I represented Mrs. Keck. She was stopped at a stop sign and Mr. Higgs negligently ran into the back of her. Fortunately, there wasn't too much damage to the car. And Mrs. Keck, she had to go to a chiropractor and everything. And here's my mom. I put Mrs. Keck on the stand. And Mrs. Keck, does your neck still hurt now? And then she says, oh yes. Did it hurt like this before? She says, oh no. Thank you very much. Insurance companies had a little more data on people and plaintiffs. And Charlie Lindbergh was a defense lawyer. He's a baby lawyer too. He said, Ms. Keck, that the same neck that got hurt when your husband ran over the curb and you went to a different chiropractor? Yes. Ms. Keck, is that the same neck that got hurt when your sister-in-law ran into the garage door and you, yes. Ms. Keck, isn't it true that neck hurt long? Well, maybe. It's 11 o'clock, it's time for a break. We go walking out, my mom sees me. She says, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And my mom would never come back to another trial. So
well, that was important.
That was a memorable experience.
What would you say is one of the most important things that you've learned from him?
How to try a case, but more importantly, how to tell the story, how to really appreciate what we do and why we do it, and not just how.
Just recently, Keith Griffin settled a huge wrongful termination case, and he says, S, do you know what I remember in the old days when Tom told me to always address the jury? And you talk about the case, what's really important, that it's their decision to make. So you start off with that. And I love hearing that because that means he's really mentoring the young lawyers.
Well, I think the favorite part of the job are the people that I'm surrounded with.
Yeah.
Although I should tell you this, Charlene has been with me for 30 years. She's my main person. And I got in a lot of trouble with her. I said, Charlene, next Wednesday you'll be with us for 30 years. I know you normally just sit at your desk during lunch. We're going to lunch. She says, great, Tom. I said, you know, Tracy and Kimmy, they do some of our work. Should we invite them too? She says, yes. So the 4 of us go to lunch, and Tracy and Kimmy are 2 of the sweetest people you've ever known. They're like this. I said, Trace, Kim, what's going on? Is there something wrong? Yes, there's a lot wrong. Oh my goodness, this is supposed to be nice. S has been here 30 years. This is supposed to be a nice occasion. What's wrong? We've been with you more than 30 years. Oh, no. You didn't buy us lunch.
You're in trouble.
I was in a lot of trouble, yes.
Yeah.
the great part about the job is the good stuff we do.
Yeah.
And the dedication of the people, and then the people that our names are not written up for winning the case or things like that, but who really are there behind us. And nobody leaves here. Linda's answered the phone. She'd be mad at me if I told you this, for 44 years. Grace has been here 46 years. Lupe has been here 40 years. And they're here all the time, work hard and so forth.
Feels like a family.
Totally, yeah, it really is.
Tell me about the reach beyond the law firm.
Yes, without doubt, Tom Girardi is a giant in the legal community and has been so for the last 40 years. Some of his jury verdicts and victories in court have impacted people across the United States, especially in the fields of toxic tort litigation and pharmaceutical litigation.
The talc stuff is really interesting.
Yeah.
Hear this stuff that, you know, every woman has used for years and causes ovarian cancer. And in the course of our work, we came across this doctor, matter of fact, he's at Harvard. And he was going to testify for us on another case, not talc. And he's a real scientist and so forth. And I asked him about talc, and he said, Tom, I told Johnson & Johnson 25 years ago this causes ovarian cancer. And he found the letter that he sent to him. So to try to help people when it's not just a whoops. And indeed, that happens in so many of our cases that it gives you, it's nice to go home at night.
So let's just go to today. Obviously, the firm is very busy. Take us through a process of a case. Is your process still the same as far as when you take a case, look at a case, and how you move through it? What's that process like?
You know, it's more or less the same. And we're not of a firm that says, okay, unless it's a $10 million case, we don't want to talk to you. A lot of people have been harmed, not massively seriously, but they need a voice too. And so if there's merit to the case, even though the case is not a $10 million case, we want to see if we can help. And as a matter of fact, sometimes that $100,000 settlement means much more to those people than some of these huge settlements mean to people.
What was the case that maybe either went your way or didn't go your way, either way, but you learned the most from, looking back on it?
Well, as a young lawyer, I represented a young fellow, high school kid. He got in a fight. Matter of fact, he was president of the Compton High School, student body president. He got in a fight, was taken to the hospital, and at the hospital they looked at him. They called his mom and dad, and they said, Percy's drunk. The mom and dad come down, and they say, gee, Percy doesn't drink. No, he's drunk. And so anyway, take him home. So they loaded him in the back of the car, they took him home. Percy woke up the next morning, he's a quadriplegic because he'd broken his neck. And the real issue was, well, if he broke his neck, was he a quadriplegic just with the break, or was all the moving around, throwing him in the back of the car and so forth, the thing that really caused the paraplegia? And we got a great verdict for Percy. Matter of fact, it was the first $1 million verdict in a malpractice case, and I was a very young lawyer, and it was wonderful. And we changed his life a bit, you know.
It had already, obviously his life had already been changed greatly, but...
Right, but this made it a little better. We had the Dodger case, and where the guy got beat up and got badly hurt. And the Dodgers said, hey, we didn't beat the guy up, the two felons did. But there was a lot of crimping on safety and security, getting rid of lights, getting rid of security people, etc. And the jury came in our favor and helped this poor guy. Matter of fact, we got good money now. He's in therapy. He's a billion times better. He's still hurt.
Yeah.
But a billion times better. And that was really nice. But I friend of mine said that Major League Baseball said to all the owners, tell me immediately what you're going to do so we do not have another Bryan Stow.
Right.
And see, maybe we do a little bit of good. You know, the concept of a trial lawyer is a very negative concept by the public. Various organizations have done everything they can. The truth of the matter is, what do trial lawyers do? They try to help people who've been harmed by bad conduct of somebody else. That's our only job. And we should be thought of a little differently, I think.
So you're probably best associated with, I guess to the public, with obviously what became the Aaron Brockovich, Pacific Gas. Is that what you think was your biggest case?
Well, it was, because, see, that was a very difficult case. What happened in that case is there was chromium in the water. Pacific Gas and Electric put chromium in the water, which is a rust inhibitor. But then when they were through, they would just dump the water on the ground. The water would percolate down, and the whole town of Hinckley was on well water. So people were drinking chromium-infested water. And the thing that was a little bit tricky about the case is that there were a lot of articles, scientific articles written that breathing chromium causes cancer. For example, welders in the 1800s would get lung cancer and esophageal cancer for the welding chromium that would come up. But there really wasn't anything written about drinking chromium. So Dr. Max Costa of NYU was our expert. And you have to have, you know, a good foundation if you're going to say, yes, the cancer is caused by this.
Sure.
So he started feeding rats chromium and either plain water or chromium water, the same amount of chromium that was in the water at Hinckley. And 90% of those rats started developing tumors. And this was the breakthrough medically that showed, yes, indeed, chromium is real bad even when you drink it.
Wow.
So that's why that case became so important.
So, I mean, I guess that kind of answers my next question. I was going to ask you, was there any time in that you kind of thought, man, I don't know if we're going to get this to the finish line, or once you started to see that kind of foundation to lay this case, you said, man, we're going to get there?
Listen, there'll be plenty of time for counting when the gambling's done. Man, you wait for that jury to come back, even though you think you got, you know, these other birds on the other side, they're some smart cookies. Man, they're coming at you the other way, you see.
Yeah.
And so it's always very exciting.
But his reach goes beyond the courtroom and juries. He's very involved in the political world, both at the state, local, and federal level. You would see Tom being called on by senators, presidential candidates, seeking his advice and counsel. And so he has been actively involved in politics for the last 30 years.
So tell me about your involvement with the Library of Congress and your recent art exhibit.
You know, one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me was being appointed to the Library of Congress. The Senate appoints 2 trustees, the House 2, and the President 2, and Harry Reid appointed me. And over the years, I've collected these courtroom drawings of major cases. I got to know a couple of those artists through our cases, and then they introduced me to others. And so whenever there was some big phenomenal case, I would contact the artists, and they would let me buy the O.J. Simpson jury or Madoff or whatever. And I gave them to the Library of Congress. They have this huge area that they did for the 55 paintings called the Thomas Girardi Drawing for Justice.
Oh, neat.
Isn't that cool?
That is super neat, yeah.
And they spent a lot of money doing this and putting up these alcoves and stuff. And it was going to be a permanent exhibit. And now I find out they're going to take it down in December. I said, really? I said, it's not going so good? They said, Tom, it's going so good.
Oh, no.
He says, you know, we have a bunch of lawyer things that you lawyer guys come in and look at. The public, they knew all about these trials and so forth. So we're taking it on the road.
How neat is
It's
that?
going to be a traveling exhibit of the Drawing for
amazing.
Justice, yeah.
Tom, looking around your office, you have tons of pictures and memorabilia and awards. Tell me about some of this.
The nice thing about this job is that you get a lot of people who are very appreciative. One of the things is from Jay Leno. I have a couple of nice pictures of Vice President Biden. I have several pictures of President Clinton, and that were genuine things that we were together and talked and so forth and so on. And it makes it fun. And it's nice, obviously, to get awards, especially because they don't say on the award Shirlene and Tracy and Kimmy and the lawyers, Amy and so forth. They say you, Tom. But the truth is, I know what the truth is, that they should be on it, not me.
I remember early on in my career, I think maybe it was only the second case that I ever got to try with Tom. And we were in the Pomona courthouse nearby, and suddenly in the midst of trial, we're on the 7th floor of the courthouse, there was a major earthquake. And Tom's up doing cross-examination, and the bailiff suddenly is telling everybody to drop and cover. And I all of a sudden realize that I'm under counsel table, covering my head up, and I look over and Tom's down under the table. And before we get the clear, Tom's back up trying to redo his cross-examination, not to miss the moment. I mean, it was a very poorly timed.
That earthquake had no business here.
And I thought, Tom, get back down, the building's still shaking.
There was a time when this young lawyer walked into our office for an interview with Tom. And I came out to meet with him, and he says, oh, my hands are sweaty. I am so nervous. And I told him, don't worry. Once you walk in there, you'll feel comfortable. And sure enough, after that, he says, oh, that was so nice. I mean, he's so pleasant to talk to, very easy to talk to. At first, though, when he walked in, Tom kind of like burst out and asked him a question, and I'm sure that's just to
Shake him up.
yeah, get the jitters out of you, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how he starts, you know, but he ends up with a very kind gesture, always.
A young lady who was brought from Mexico early on in her life, went to UCLA, and Tom, anonymously, at least he thought it was anonymous, paid for her law education. And now she is giving back and helping the disadvantaged. And that's the story that will live well beyond Tom. His legacy will last for decades, in my opinion.
Tom, your radio show is called Champions of Justice, and you guys recently just won an award. Tell me about that.
Okay, so I'll go back several years.
Okay.
And a small radio station called me, and they said, we've been given your name, and we want to do a law show. And several people thought that maybe you'd be the right person to do it. And I said, okay, and it's a weekly show and so forth. And I said, well, I couldn't do a talk show because I'm all over the place and I couldn't, well, we would record it. So that night I came home to Erica. I said, Erica, I've never been busier in my life. I don't have time for something like this. And so I'm just going to say, forget about it. She says, Tom, you're the person who tells me that people don't know the good work that good judges do and good lawyers do. Now you have a chance to tell them, and you're going to say you're too busy. I said, okay, Erica, we'll do it. Champions of Justice was formed, and we've had some great people on the show. We've had 4 of the United States Supreme Court justices. Scalia was on the show. He was known to be fairly conservative. And I had a case in the United States Supreme Court called Semtech versus Lockheed. And the case we filed it here in California, we got transferred to Maryland. And in California, there was no statute of limitations problem, but in Maryland there was. And we got thrown out. And the Supreme Court granted a hearing. And Scalia, who was a big person on states' rights, said, California law applies. And so we win. So Scalia said, Girardi, you plaintiff guys, you don't like me that much. What'd you think of the opinion in Semtech versus Lockheed? I said, Justice, it was awesome. But Justice, I have to say one thing, one robin doesn't make a spring. And he laughed. 4 days later, Charlene comes in with this little box, United States Supreme Court. We open it up, it's a little bird inside from Scalia. How about that?
That's cute.
What a cute story.
Yeah.
So we've had some great guests on the show. We've
Yeah.
brought a lot of good lawyers who've done some great stuff on both sides, either the plaintiff side or the defense side and so forth. But it really caught on, and now we're on 14 stations across the country.
That's wonderful.
And a couple weeks ago in New York, the best radio show, we got the gold. Isn't that
That's
something?
awesome.
Yeah, that was really
That's
cool.
Great.
How does a person know, or what is there something a person has to look for, or when do they know that they need to reach out to you? Is there what's the bar?
Well, you know, generally speaking, they know it when it happens. If they're an auto accident and so forth, all of a sudden a drug throws them into cardiac arrest, and the doctor says, oh my God, you shouldn't have taken this drug, etc. So people are generally put on some sort of notice of the problem. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they read about it in the newspaper. Some of these defects people don't know anything about, and lo and behold, then there's an article that says, oh my goodness, I had that kind of a car. Oh my goodness, I had that product. Indeed, there are some people that have no clue as to what's going on, and a friend will say, gee whiz, you know what, you should see a lawyer on this.
And I remember one story about Tom's energy level. Tom has more energy than 3 30-year-old lawyers put together. He was in transit from London, England on a Saturday, and he happened to call me. And I'm working on a Saturday, of course, and Tom said, hey, David, could you help me out with something? And I go, sure. He goes, can you get me someone to pick me up at Los Angeles Airport? I said, sure. Are you going home, having come across from the Atlantic? He says, no, I need to go home, shower, then I'm flying to Las Vegas for a championship boxing match. So that's the kind of energy he has. He's always having a good time.
What would you say is an obstacle that you've had to overcome to get where you are in your career?
You know, I suppose being able to lose a case and the heartbreak that takes, even if it's not a huge case, but here you have not been persuasive. The jury said no. You didn't sell your concept. I think, and fortunately there haven't been too many of those, but I think you learn much more as a lawyer by those than you do with the terrific win.
Yeah.
Even though you may have a lot of wins, the loss you incurred teaches you much more about the practice. But at the end of the day, it's terrific. I love our little law firm. I love the stuff we do, and I'm very, very happy with having this award come to me. I've gotten a couple of those awards, nothing like this. This is so terrific. The organization is so terrific. You know, in so many professional organizations, they key themselves to a particular segment. And here we're looking at all types of professionals. We're looking at scientists, we're looking at people in the medical community, we're looking at people who've done real good stuff. And to be a part of this organization means so very, very much. It's awesome.